the French had developed the engine to go smaller. Like I said, we had those old Fiats that were 900 cubic inches, 4 cylinders. Well, this was still 4 cylinders, but they made them smaller and more precise. So you could make power out of RPMs as opposed to brute force. Also, since the engine was smaller, it was lighter. Cars would handle better, which means you could go around turns better. You could go faster and the whole bit. You could accelerate quicker because you didn't have as much weight. Also, since it was smaller, you could narrow down your body work. So all these different things came into play. And what makes this so significant was that they showed up in Los Angeles, and of course, in this era, even as advanced as it was, they break down. So they wound up at the carburetor shop of Harry Miller. And Miller had his own designs, whatnot, for engines, but he hadn't quite finalized those yet. And when he got a look at these and saw what they were doing, he said, okay. So a couple of light bulbs went off. Then the Miller engines came into play, and that's what dominated the racing circuit for a number of years afterwards.
Indy.
Yep, sure. All through Indy and all the board track era and the whole bit. And what happened when Miller was a great engineer, but he was a lousy businessman, as most engineers are. So he went bankrupt, and when he did, he sold off his stuff to Fred Offenhauser. Offenhauser, of course, produced the Offies that dominated for another 3 or 4 decades after that. Yeah. Offenhauser eventually became Meyer, and Meyer-Drake, and all of that connection. So from 1913, 14, give or take, all the way up through the 70s, 80s, and even into today, a lot of that technology is still around. And it all started with these cars, with the Peugeot cars.
But Peter Mullen doesn't have this one.
No, not this one.
That is an overhead cam engine, doesn't
Yep,
it?
Sure does. But even here, you still needed a mechanician to keep an eye on things, keep things pumped up, and keep things going. Because it was that particular era, it was just that way. Here you can see an older car. This is a Pope Hartford, again with the chain drive, wooden spokes, and the whole bit. But you could well imagine this car with carriage work, fenders, the whole bit. It was just a stripped down stock car. And again, it was in color. We didn't realize they had color back then. Sure they did. There's a Simplex, the same kind of idea. And here's a Cadillac road car. There was a lot of inner city races that took place, like from Los Angeles up to San Francisco and through Visalia, and a lot of towns had these races would come through, and they were cross-country races. They were terrific. Big crowd draws, the whole bit. And again, they were stripped down. Here this guy's got lights so he can travel on the roads at night. And then here's a car that won in 1911 at Santa Monica in the light car race. This is a national race car. And it also ran at the first Indy 500. Indianapolis Speedway was open for a while, a couple of years before they started running 500 miles, and they had established their own thing. Again, auto racing had to develop as a sport as well. It didn't just come out of the box and be ready to go. No, they had to figure out the rules, how they're going to do it, scheduling, all these sorts of things. And so that car is significant in that regard, and this is still around as well. So I'll remind you one more time, race course, Ocean of Montana, to Dead Man's Curve, up Wilshire, to the Veterans Center, which was the old soldiers' home, make the turn back down San Vicente, turn back onto Ocean Avenue, and there's the ocean out there. They ran 1909 to 1919. They used the same course every time. Here we go. Why was this significant to Santa Monica? We're going to bring it all together now. Here's the population for Santa Monica. You see in 1880, about 400 people. 1890, they had tripled. Then they doubled again, then they doubled again, and the whole bit here. Santa Monica was starved for residents. They needed people. The reason you need people is so that you have a tax base. With a tax base, you can then fund your own autonomous city government. Government is needed to provide roads, provide power, provide sewer, water, all the necessities. Back then, that's what government did. Now it does tons of stuff. Well, back then, that's what they needed it for. And they needed residents. They needed them to come to Santa Monica. They kept going other places. They didn't want to come here. Well, part of the auto racing did was they paved Wilshire Boulevard. They negotiated to get everything in the county area paved and graded. They negotiated and actually did it themselves along the rest of San Vicente. But they had to do that in order to attract citizens, so the city would be able to flourish. Because Los Angeles was busy annexing the world at the time. As you can see, Santa Monica, or Los Angeles started out 28 square miles. It was actually a square shape. It was the original pueblo for Los Angeles. 1900 wasn't that much bigger. But between 1910 and 1920, when these races were taking place, look at that. They were just gobbling up everything they could. What else happened here? 1913. Anybody? Water. The Mulholland Water Project came through. So, hey, a little Tommy Town over there. Nice. Glad to have you over here. You want to buy water? Or do you want to be annexed into us? And so that's what Los Angeles was doing. They were holding a big water hammer over these small towns and just annexing all the property. The trouble they got into was, in order to annex these things, first it had to be contiguous to Los Angeles city borders in the first place. You can't have little satellite pieces of a town. And that's why state charter and federal charter and all these other rules that go into place. And they're there for a reason. So you have to incrementally start sizing yourself out. When they did the San Fernando Valley, it was pretty much one big shot. So that's where all that came from. And what happened, though, is as you develop these places, you have to then provide them with city services, be it roads, sewer, electricity, these kind of things.
Fire.
And eventually, they got too far spread out, and so they came to a halt. Well, that and the Depression from the 1930s pretty much slowed everything down. But that's what they were after, and they wanted to get Santa Monica because it's right by the beach. It's great. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Santa Monica, Ocean Park, and Venice. Santa Monica's to the north, Ocean Park in the middle, Venice to the south. There were multiple attempts at trying to get those three entities together because they were separate from Los Angeles by 20 some miles. And they just couldn't agree. Too many big egos involved. They couldn't come together and become one big entity. Because if you annex a property, it means you take it over. What's mine is mine, what's yours is ours. And now you follow my rules. They had another thing called consolidation where we become one group and you keep your stuff, I keep my stuff, you keep your identity, I keep my identity. Okay, and we'll just work in conjunction like that. Didn't work out. Too many big egos. Nobody would allow it. So Santa Monica had its own water. And by this time, people were coming to Santa Monica as residents and staying there. They also had a policy of single-family housing. So they had big houses. They were known as the better neighborhood, as it were. Because by this time, as they were developing, more affluent people were coming to the area. And in Ocean Park in Venice, they had been around for 10, 15 years by now, and the dwellings were smaller, more apartment-type things. And so by this time, they were starting to get run down. So Santa Monica was a more desirable place to live anyway. So that's what's happening over there.
Where did the water come for Santa Monica?
It comes from the aquifer underneath the property. When Baker donated his property, he donated the aquifer as well. He also donated the property for the Veterans Center. So they had to, they divvied all that up. But they have their own water. And even today, Santa Monica provides about 85% of its own water needs to its own aquifer, which is right under their ground. They had a whole water treatment plant and the whole bit. So they didn't need the water from Los Angeles. And what Los Angeles would do is say, hey, little town over here, why don't you let us come in? We'll pave some roads for you. We'll bring you some power, and we'll do all this neat stuff for you. That's what they told Venice. And then soon after, they said, well, you don't really need canals. We're just going to fill them in. You need roads instead of canals. And so they did that. And they did that right up until Venice, what was left of the original Venice people, stood up and said, no, wait a minute, that's part of our character. We want to maintain that. By then it was too late. They're part of Los Angeles. And the other thing that happens is Los Angeles is so big and spread out, several hundred square miles and the whole bit. City center is way over here. Your town is over here. How much attention do you think you're going to get? How much representation do you think you're going to get? Keep in mind, the roads still aren't all that great. It still takes you 2 hours just to get to downtown. No radio, no television. Telephone's very rudimentary at this point, so communication was really slow. It just wasn't happening. So that's why auto racing was key to Los Angeles staving off annexation to the evil clutches of Los Angeles. It was that specific time period, 1909 to 1919. You can see the population was increasing, partly because of the attention that it got through the road races, also because of the infrastructure that was provided by the Auto Dealers Association. Los Angeles was expanding rapidly, and they wanted a beach community. They got it in Venice and ruined the place. Santa Monica maintains its autonomy and its character. If you go there today, it has a very different feel than other parts of the greater Los Angeles area. And part of it is because they maintain their own city government. They have federal rules and state rules and all these things they have to live by, but they're pretty much autonomous. They can decide for themselves how they want things to go.
Was there a decision made by the city government in Santa Monica to have a road race to solidify the city and keep Los Angeles out, or was it something that just happened organically?
It just happened organically, really is all I could really say on that. Nobody said, if we have an auto race, we'll build the city. It just didn't work that way. Everything was developing, and with so many people coming in, you can see, you got all these people here in 1880, and we're hanging out, we're all Santa Monica people, isn't this great? Well, just 10 years later, we got twice as many people here. And they don't care what we thought went on before, because whenever people come into a new area, rather than assimilate, they tend to bring their belief structure from where they came from. Unless they're vastly outnumbered, then they say, hey, wait a minute, there's a character to this place. This is why I came here in the first place. Well, no, they came here because they were dynamic, interested people, and that's why they wanted to be here. Keep in mind that Los Angeles is really the end of the road. There's no way, I mean, you can imagine somebody coming across the country, getting to, say, Oklahoma, and looking around and saying, hey, this is kind of nice. We should just stop here. Okay. Well, you don't do that with Los Angeles, especially back then. To get to Los Angeles, you had to come all the way across the country, take you a couple of months. You had to go across the desert, climb over the mountains. You come into the desert. What the heck are we doing here? There's no industry. There's no natural resources, you know, the timber, mining, all that sort of thing. So you had to want to be here. What that did was that brought dynamic individuals when they came here. They were looking for something. They had that energy. They wanted to do something.
There was also a rate war. The railroad.
Yep.
You could get here from Texas for $6.
Yep.
And a lot of people, that was like the first influx of people right after the Civil War that brought all those people out there. So that was like the first big growth there between 1850 and 1900.
Absolutely. And the reason they had rate wars with the rail lines was, I'm the big industrialist guy. I have rail lines. You're the little puny industrialist guy. You have rail lines too, but I can bring my prices down to next to nothing and put you out of business because they won't use you because they can use me for $8. Why not do that? So eventually you go out of business, then I'll take over your rail lines. That's what rate wars are about. Although I found out also that the rail lines who did that tended to make as much, if not more money anyway, because since I got a free ticket on the train, I can afford to buy my lunch on the train. I can afford to get extra bennies on the train. And so that's what you did. So they made as much money doing that anyway. You know, those guys weren't stupid. They had it all figured out. And corporations are designed to make money. That's what they do. So they figure out ways of doing it. They're not really out to rip anybody off. They try and give you value and whatnot. But they're still trying to make a profit. That's what they do.
Long Beach put a race in Long Beach for the same reasons that
Yep.
the race was put in here. They had an ambition to build business down here and build big
Yep.
buildings, and it worked.
That was a whole different sort of approach, though, because they needed that to revitalize their downtown area and do all that. So it was a very active part on behalf of the city of Long Beach to do that.
Absolutely.
Very far-sighted, by the way.
Yeah.
And so that's where all that came from. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up. That's how Los Angeles ties into Santa Monica and why the road races were significant for that. Of course, if you want to know more, I know a guy who wrote a book, Real Road Racing, Santa Monica Road Races. And also we have a video where they raced based on the first book that I wrote about all the old racetracks in Los Angeles. Again, more auto racing has taken place in Southern California than any other place in the world. Over 174 different auto racing venues, official racing tracks. One of the most important, one of the most exciting ones that always gets my thrills up is the Santa Monica Road Races, because it was such an exciting, unknown, very much a fast learning era. It's wonderful.
Fascinating.
Thanks for you guys being here.
Good job.
So there you go. That's it, yeah. All right.